Okay, geweldig. We are on Daf Lamed Hey Amar Aleph, and yesterday we were learning a little bit about what the problem is with the keva, with the cheese of a goy, and the Gemara was discussing if the perish, the stuff in the keva of the animal, was going to be a problem. And the Gemara said, if it is a problem, why isn't there a problem of Isra Ano as well? And that's how the Gemara remained. The Gemara remained that there's a problem of Isser Achila if it's made with the keva of Avoda Zara, but it's not a problem with Isra Ano. And that was the question that Rabbi Shmuel asked Rabbi Yeshua, why is it that it's only Osir Ba'achila and not a Shabano? The Gemara finished up yesterday by saying, why don't you say because it's not Ba'en anymore? The perish from the keva is not Ba'en when you have the cheese. The Gemara answered, since it was an enzyme that created the whole cheese, that's considered Ba'en. If you have wine that was mixed into murais, that wouldn't be a problem because wine added a little flavor and then it's totally dissolved and it's totally not here anymore. There it's only also bechil not bano. But something that was an enzyme that created the entire cheese, that's not considered, like it's not here anymore, and therefore the kasha remained. Why would there not be an iser hana? Okay, so when that question was posed by Rabbi Shmuel to Rabbi Yeshua changed the subject. And he changed the subject by asking Rabbi Shmuel, how would he touch the pasuk of Kitovim Doidecha Miyoyin? Is it Doidecha Loshen Zocher, or is it Doidayach Loshen Akeva? Is it referring to the Rebbeinu Shalom, or is it referring to Klal Yisrael? Is it Klal Yisrael talking about the Rebbeinu Shalom, that they love the Rebbeinu Shalom, Kitovim Doidecha Miyoyin, or is it the Rebbeinu Shalom talking to Klal Yisrael, that he loves their Doidecha Miyayin? So the Gemara asks, "My kitoivim Doidecha Miyayin," and the Gemara is really going to try to understand. There's a lot of different diversion tactics that Rabbi Yeshua could have used to avoid answering Rabbi Shmuel's question. Why did he pick this pasuk with Dafka? Kitoivim Doidecha Miyayin. Yosy Abdimi Omar Amra Knesses Yisrael Lefnei Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Knesses Yisrael, this is how we touch the pasuk. Knesses Yisrael tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom, Arevim Olai Divrei Doidecha. We love the words of your Doidecha, Yoser Miyena Shel Torah. What does Doidecha mean? Zokt Rashi, Divrei Doidecha or Divrei Seif. We love the drushes and the gzeres of Chazal even more than the Torah Shebal Peh. So this is somewhat alluding to the gzera of asering cheese. Out of all the different psukim that Rabbi Yeshua could have asked Rabbi Shmuel to divert his attention from this question of the cheese, Vosapis he picked this pasuk. Amar Reb Shimon ben Pazi v'tema Reb Shimon ben Ami mereisha de kra. Really, he was trying to hint. Rabbi Yeshua was trying to hint to Rabbi Shmuel a message that comes from the beginning of this pasuk. And the pasuk says, Yishakeni minishigas piu. I should be kissed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is that referring to? Amar le Yishmael achi. Rabbi Yeshua told Rabbi Shmuel, my dear brother Yishmael, chashoik sif soisecha zubazu. Tie your lips together. Rashi says chashoik sif soisecha, meaning kimitargaminon v'chushukeyem v'chusheyem. It's like a belt that ties it together. Keep your mouth closed. V'al tevaha lahoshev, and don't ask a kasha on the gzera. You're jumping to ask a kasha. Why is it not osir bano? Keep your lips together. Don't ask such questions. Why not? My timer. Amar Ula v'temer Rab Shmuel bar Abba gzera chadoshehi. This was a new gzera that they made in the times of the Gemara. You're not supposed to probe and second guess gzera that the Chachamim make. Zot Rashi, the ein mefakfikim ba, the ein mefarishim taima. We don't explain. When the Rabbanan make a gzera, we take it for what it is, and we don't probe and ask why. We accept it. Mefakfikim Zot Rashi is a loshen chatita, digging, b'davar sosem lefashvashay, digging and poking at it and probing at it to try to understand it. We don't do that when it comes to a new gzera that the Chachamim make.
Don't they always give their reasons for gzeras?
Oh, we're about to get there. So my gzerasa, what is the gzera? Amar Reb Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Reb Yishuv ben Levi. It's mishum nikur. The reason why they answered it is the reason why they're answering the cheese is because they're afraid that the milk that the cheese was made in was left out and the snake put venom into it. So now we've just turned this whole thing over. We were talking about the problem that it's made from the keva of Avoda Zara, and it's a shaila of Isser Hana of Avoda Zara, and now we just changed the whole thing around. Now the whole concern is because of poison. That's why there wouldn't be any Isser Hana. To Gemara, if that was the answer, so couldn't Rabbi Yeshua have made this very simple? When Rabbi Shmuel asked, why is it Asher B'achila and not Bano? Why didn't he just say so? Zok to Gemara Kidu'ula, the Omar Ula. He gazri gzeirasa b'marava. When they're geyser gzeira in marava, when Rabbanan make a new gzeira, loy megali taima atreisa yarchi shata. They don't reveal the reason. When the Rabbanan would make a gzeira marava in a Yisrael, they would not reveal the reason. Why wouldn't you reveal the reason? Now you reveal it eventually. Once the gzeira is accepted and it's proliferated through Klal Yisrael, that this is the new way of doing things, then you say the reason. But until then, you don't say the reason because you don't want to open it up for dispute. Dilma ika inish deloy svirle. There might be people who don't agree with the reasoning behind the new gzera, and va'asi lizulzuliba, and they will not take the gzera seriously. They will deride it, and the gzera won't hold. So, in order for a gzera to take hold, there's no reason given for it, and everyone trusts that Chazal made this decision. It's the right thing to do. And then later on, once everyone already has accepted the Gzeira, then the reason will be divulged. And even though some people don't think that the Gzeira was justified, once it's already what people are doing, it's going to take hold. Let's see Rashi. Loi megalu taima lama gosrolov. In Marava, they wouldn't announce right away why they would have created another Gzeira. Why? Dil meiko de les lehu taima. There might be people who don't agree with the reasoning to justify this gzera, and they will not separate themselves from what the gzera tells them to separate from, and they will not take it seriously. The milsa, now when they make a gzera, since they don't say the reasoning, everybody will separate from that they're being geyser against. The savru kamu rabbanon b'milsa. Person will say, if the Rabbanan made it a gzeira like that, they probably thought it through and realized that there's an important reason for it, even though I might not know what the reason is. The Rabbanan, the Shavrim come Rabbanan b'milsa, the Asi minei churva, that if they didn't make this gzeira, something terrible would happen, even though they didn't share with us what it was specifically that they're concerned about. We don't know. So if they tell us the reason right away, all the hackers in the coffee room will say, why does it encourage you for that? It doesn't make any sense. But even the hackers in the coffee room, they'll accept the gzeira if they don't know the reason for it. And then once something is proliferated in 12 months, even if there are people who don't agree with it, people are already used to doing it that way.
The spur just the opposite. If you don't understand it, you don't really accept it very well, or at all. I know in the Aguda years and years ago, when the Rav got up to speak and he, said, this is usher, so a few cynics from the older generation said, "Nachazach was matunish,"
Ultimate anxiety. I don't think that this plan in my Rava was tailor-made for the Kol Da'alam Gover attitude in the Agura. So as I'm being that I grew up with the Agura, my brain was programmed based on the Agura. This Gemara and this Rashi clashed with me because I'm thinking exactly what you thought. If you don't tell me anything, for sure I won't accept it.
Right.
If you want to do something, you have to justify yourself. But vice the Rosh in Eretz Yisrael, people have the psyche to be accepting. And only if they knew the reason and they didn't agree, only then would they hack. What a boring life.
Not sure. In Eretz Yisrael, we've never seen all of a sudden there's a Kol Torah and there's a poster that gets put up, signed by either the 100 Rabbanim big stamp or the 5 preset Rabbanim big stamp, and everybody looks to see which Rav didn't sign on it.
This Gemara, this Rashi, is more revealing about the psyche of society than it is of the Rabbanim Svara. Because in today's day and age, I can't see Zara taking hold without any reason. I just don't see it happening.
Akiva, we often find later on that many of the signers denied that they signed it.
That's right. That's also right. Moti calls it the rubber stamp. That's right. So it's hard for us with our psyche today to understand what's going on. The vice it must have been much more accepting in those days. So that's what the reason was. Ultimately the reason for that the Khan is Nikur, but even though that's the reason, they didn't want to publicize it. Okay.
Are you ever aware of a takana that didn't happen because of a maisa? Every takana that I'm aware of, something happened.
It's a reaction. It's not proactive.
Correct.
I understand, but they don't have to say. So you tell me would usually be obvious what the reason was?
I think so. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a takana.
Well,
I can't think of any time we learned.
Maybe that's precisely the difference between nowadays and then. Then the Chachamim had more foresight and backbone, and they were proactive. And that's why people didn't necessarily know what they were worried about. Nowadays, everything is done reactive. So maybe then it's more obvious why they're making takanas, and therefore some people could question the justification for that.
It's not always a Maisa, but I mean, many times there are, but like Shema Yavirenu Dalat Amis B'Shis Rabim.
But that doesn't mean it happened. It means they're being proactive.
Right.
The only reactive one that I'm aware of is when they changed how the Kohanim get their avodah for the day. They changed it from a race up to kevitz to a raffle, a pious. Okay, so let's see what we have over here. So Frank the Gemara, once you're telling me, and the Gemara is basically demonstrating why they couldn't reveal the reason. Because look at this. Now that you're telling me it's all about the snake drinking from the wine and inserting venom. I mean, the snake inserting venom into the milk before it was cheese. Well, that's a problem. Megadav bar Rabbi Yirmiyah, that's a strong lotion. Elamayata, Yavsha, Tishteri, Yashan, Tishteri, Zok to Gemara, Zok Rashi, Dilma Ika, the Lesbo Haitaima, Yovish Mutter, Kol Gilui, She Yovish, anytime it dries out, and it's any thing that venom gets inserted into, if it dries out, it's a raya that it couldn't have been poisoned. The Arishal Nochash Ilu Hayasham Loy Haya Manicha Loyavish. One of the things that the hemotoxin has in it, which is one of the poisons that the venom of a snake has, is it doesn't let things coagulate. It doesn't let things evaporate. It keeps everything moist. It keeps the blood flowing. That's one of the ways that it kills, because it creates a scenario that anything that bleeds will never stop bleeding. Or Yoshan, if it's yayin or sheikhar sheniskalu, if it's wine or sheikhar, kishem chadashim, before they're fermented, the himtin lahem achen nisyashnu, you wait so that they should ferment. If it ferments, mutter. So that we say that yain that was megula you can't use it as is. But if you wait and it ferments, then in fact you could use it because it's proof that the snake never inserted venom into it. So yain v'shechshin is galuk shem chadosh. V'himdin lahem ad shenis mutter, it'll be mutter. The hayaboy arish shal nachash. If it had venom, it kills the ability for something to ferment. So if it's alt nikar, are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me that it's not going to be a problem? History, Yoshin history. The Amr Abchanina Yavesh mutter. You know why? Ein manicha liyavish. Venom will not let it dry out. Yoshin mutter because ein manicha liyashin. Amr Abchanina ein echrami. That is possible, but lefishe efshir law v'loi tachzuche chalav. And Rashi learns, and Tosfos has a different approach, but Rashi learns, Ben Guma shall givina nisher min chalav. We're afraid that maybe non-kosher milk could have been mixed in, or no, I'm permission the Yosy. I apologize. We're afraid that there might be some of the milk that has venom in it, and therefore parts of it. So when you have cheese that curdles, there's sometimes in the holes of the Swiss cheese, you'll find some liquid. Not every part of the milk turns to cheese. There is some liquid there. And therefore, we're afraid that that part has venom in it. The chalav shechalvoi oivit kachavim ve'en Yisrael re'eyu aser. Oh, for carrot. So Rashi just changed now. We're no longer concerned about poison. Now we're afraid that maybe this cheese was made out of goyish milk. Now, normally, milk that's not milk of a cow will not curdle, will not be able to turn into cheese. But what we're afraid of here is that will be aser dilma arav bay chalav tamei. Maybe there's chalav tamei in it, and therefore they're asering. Let's peek into the back. Tosfos doesn't like this shot. In Bays, Dilma Orav le Chalav Tomei, the Afal Gav the Chalav Tomei Einei made, even though Chalav Tomei will not become cheese, the mir of Tomei Bitar, Hatomei Nishar Im Nisyuve the Chalva Hatar, Jakar Mishka. What will happen is if you mixed some non-kosher milk from a non-kosher animal, into the milk that is trying to make cheese out of, although the kosher milk will curdle and turn into cheese, there'll be some liquid remaining, which will be the liquid of the chalav tamei. The chalav tamei also min haTorah. That's also min haTorah. We're afraid that in the crevices and cracks of the sheets, even though you might say, what do you mean if it curdled? The cheese obviously was made out of chalav tar, but no, there's some liquid there, which is the norm even if you use kosher milk, but there could also be that there's some non-kosher milk mixed in there, and that's what the concern is. Tosfos doesn't like this shot because he asks which goy in their right mind will mix in chalav tamei if that chalav tamei won't curdle. He's basically just wasting his milk. So that's why Tosfos learns there's still a concern of some of the poison. Is what Tosfos says. Tosfos says the kasha dimkain havale l'Rabbi Yirmiyah. I'm sorry, that's a different thing. Tosfos kasha is if we're changing now from the concern of poison to the concern of chalav tamei, Rabbi Yirmiyah should have said Ella, because clearly Rabbi Yirmiyah is arguing on the whole svara of poison. So it shouldn't say Amar Chanina b'shi avshula let's say Ella Amar Chanina, because we're changing the whole shot from a concern about poison to a concern about chalav tamei. So Rabbi Tam learns that it's still going with poison, and we're afraid if there's some poison there, that'll explain some of the liquid that you find in the cheese. So at this point, we have a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos if the concern is on chalav tamei or if the concern is still because of poison. Shmuel says there's a different reason why they aser cheese. Not because they mix it with the contents of the stomach. Rather, it's because they actually curdle the milk in the meat in the stomach itself.
use Leo when something's cold?
So that's part of the discussion that we're going to have now. Fragt the Gemara, sagt the Gemara, it's ba'or keves nevela. Fragt the Gemara, hakeva gufa shari. So now you're telling me, you're conceding that if you use the perish, you use the contents of the stomach, that's not going to be a problem to us or the cheese. It's only a problem because it was actually in the meat of the keva. Did Shmuel actually say that only if the cheese was placed into the actual stomach, but if it was just mixed with the contents of the stomach, it would not be usher. But now we learned keva sa'ovid kechavim, the keva of a goy v'shel nevela of a nevela harezu asura, they're going to be usher. Va'avinaba, and the Gemara challenged this Mishnah. Atu da'ovid kechavim lav nevelahi. If it's of a goy, it's also nevela. Anything that a goy shechts is not a shchita, so it's also nevela. So why are there two categories? It's just one big category, and that is kevas shchitas oivet gechavim nevela. Anything that the goy shechts is obviously going to be a nevela, and therefore asura. So you see clearly that it's talking about the contents. Shmuel is talking about the contents of the stomach, and he says that's also usher. So, from the fact that Shmuel said that the cheese is usher because you actually put it into the meat of the keva itself, is mashma that the contents, if you just took the contents out of the keva and used it to make the cheese, it would be okay. But from here it's mashma that's not okay. Turning on to page, loy kasha. That's not shver. Kan koidem chazara kan la'acher chazara. Zogt the Gemara, there was actually a change of heart over here. Oysa Mishnah, the Shchitas Chulin, the Kevas Oivet Kechavim Nevela Basura, the Mishnah that we just quoted, that Shmuel commented on and said that it's all just Nevela, that was Nishnis Koidim Shechazer Boy Rabbi Yeshua Mitvarak. At that point, Rabbi Yeshua still held that the problem of cheese is because they used the contents, the perish of the stomach. That's what Rabbi Yeshua held at that point. Sha'amal Rabbi Shmuel mepnei shamamid noisai bekevas nevela v'savar la pirshi. At that point, that's what they held. They held that the contents of the stomach is not called garbage. It is something that's part of the animal, and it's going to be usher. And that was the original comment that Rabbi Shua told Rabbi Shmuel that the problem is mamid noisai be kevas nevela, but the kan lachar. But lemaisa, Rabbi Yeshua was choizer from that explanation. The kan lachar hach desheni hach deshani Shmuel. This that Shmuel now said mipnei shamamid noisa, but or that's after Rabbi Yeshua was already choizer. But at first he thought it was just the contents. Avol keva atzmai, but just the contents of the keva shari, it would be mutter. La'acher chazara shechazar by Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua was chayzer. You know why he was chayzer? Mipnei tshuva sheshal Rabbi Shmuel. Because Rabbi Shmuel asked, "Oy bezoi, why is it asur ba'no?" Right? That was the question Rabbi Shmuel asked. Why is it not asur ba'no? So that's why he said it's in the or. The or was the problem, and it's not because the contents of avodah zarah. However, if you're chayzer, so then the Mishnah that we just quoted at the bottom of Amar Aleph is no longer true because the contents of the keva would not answer. It's pure Shabbat, right? Because we had a kasha. Why is it different than have a carbon? It's pure Shabbat. So why wasn't the Mishnah retracted? Zakta Gemara, Mishnah leizazim in play. And Rashi says the hoil the nishnis. When Rebbe put a Mishnah in, the people Mishnayos was like poetry. People remembered the whole sequence of Mishnayos as one big song. So once people already knew that Mishnah, they didn't rock the boat by taking it out and confusing people. We don't pass like that Mishnah, but the Mishnah still remained. Okay. Rav Machia, Mishmei, Rav Ada Bar Ava Omar. So we have now some different reasons to answer. One is because they're mimed the cheese in the actual stomach of an animal that's not kosher, and that will explain why it's osher b'achila, but not osher b'ana. Another reason was we're afraid that there's poison mixed in. Another reason might be is we're afraid there's some non-kosher milk mixed in. So we had to get three reasons. And now we have another reason where Malchia Mishmei Rabbi Bar Ava Omar Mipnei Shemachlikin Panel B'Shemen Chazer. They would smear the oil of chazer, glycerin, on it to make it look shiny and nice, and that's the problem with eating their cheeses. Because they're maimed, they use chaymitz, and chaymitz would be maybe a problem of yain nesach. I'm assuming that's what the problem is. If they use chaymitz, so that means it's a problem of yain nesach again, or stam yain, it should be asabana. They use sap from orla. All orla is asur bana, and that's why it's asur. And again, the Gemara is going to ask here as well, why wouldn't it be asur bana? Command kaitana that nan Rabbi Eliezer Omer hamaimid bisrafa orla. If you're maimid cheese using the curdling agent of sap from orla, asur mepnei shehu peri, because it's the sraf of the peri is like the peri itself, and the peri is asur bana. Zok to Gemara afilu tema Rabbi Yeshua. Now Rabbi Yeshua argues on Rabbi Eliezer, and he yells, "Amamid b'srafa orla." It's not asur. So afilu tema Rabbi Yeshua, who in that Mishnah holds, there's no problem of being mamid b'srafa orla. At kan like polag Rabbi Yeshua alad Rabbi Eliezer el bekatfa deguza. That sap that comes out of the trunk of the tree. Sap that comes out of the trunk of the tree, Rabbi Yeshua does not consider to be peirei shalorla, so it wouldn't be asur bana. Avol bakatva de peira, but if they use sap that oozes out of the peri itself of orla, moidi, everybody agrees that would also create an isur hana. Behind it, this explains the following Mishnah: Amar Rabbi Yeshua, shemaiti beferish, shamayimid b'srafa alin, ub'srafa ikrin mutter. I heard that if you're mamid in the sap that comes out of leaves or sap that comes out of roots or trunk, that will be mutter. But the srafa pagan, but if it's sap that comes out of the small payers themselves, osur mipnei shu peir. Fragt Gemara, bein Rab Chisda, bein Rab Nachman Yitzchak, titzer bano. Rab Nachman Yitzchak was saying it's because of srafa orla. Rab Chisda says it's because of chayim, it's because of yain stam, it should be osur bano. That still remains a kasha, which was Rabbi Shmuel's kasha. But if it's because of poison, or because of chalav tamei, or because of nevela, then we understand why there's an isra achila and not an isra hana. So there's an interesting tosis I wanted to learn. I think David Zolti will appreciate it. We're looking for a pasuk. Rabbi Yeshua was looking for a pasuk to divert. So our Gemara comes out. The reason why I picked this pasuk, because this pasuk is also sending a message b'remiza that when it comes to a gzeira, don't question it right away. Right? That was one of the hidden messages, is that the kitayvim the dechem yayin, the pasuk begins was yishakenim and the shikos piu, which is hinting that don't question gzeiros because they're deeper than we could understand. But let's have a look at Tosis. Why out of all psukim this pasuk was picked? The Gemara comes out that the reason why we picked Dafka this pasuk is because of the beginning of the pasuk that we're talking about, which hints that you shouldn't be questioning Xeris. But the Yerushalmi has a very interesting shtickle. Yerushalmi, im lafliga nischaven, if Rabbi Yeshua was just trying to push off Rabbi Yishmael from his question, he should have picked some other pasuk to create a diversion. There's 5 famous psukim in the Torah where there is a dual meaning. It's possible to explain them in 2 different ways. And these are famous psukim that everyone knows have a dual meaning. So those are the psukim that Rabbi Yeshua should have picked. Shasimin, the simin to remember these 5 psukim are mamish oi. It's mamish oi. What are these 3 psukim? Mochar, mishukadim, se'es, or vikam. So I don't know what these psukim were, but the Mesivta brings down these psukim, and it's fascinating that many of them, even we're aware that there's a dual meaning in how to understand them. So I'm just going to read these psukim in time from the Mesivta. He brings them on. The first pasuk is haloyim tetiv seis. So that's one of the shins. Haloyim tetiv seis and loy tetiv. So that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu told a kayin, right? Either ship up or ship out. Im tetiv says, if you improve, you'll be carried, you'll be okay. But the Evshel Kroisoi says vim loy tetiv. So we don't know. There's two ways to read that pasuk. The other one was kiba apam hargu ish. This is talking about Shimon and Levi Achim. Kiba apam hargu ish uver tzoinam ikru shar, and then it says or apam ki az. So this you could also read in different ways. Shav shel kraisai ikru shar or kiba apam akru shar or it could mean Shav shel kraisai or apam ki az. So that's also a dual meaning. Or it says, well, one is cursing the shore and one is cursing them, right? Then you have the third pasuk is
shore. With all respect, you speak about the right.
Vayomer Moshe Yeshua b'chai lanu anoshim v'tzeihi lochem ba'amalek mochar anoichi nitzav al rosh hagiva. So the question is it hilachem ba'amalek mochar? Hashem saying, go fight the war tomorrow, or go fight the war today? Go fight today, but tomorrow I'm going to help you out. Or the last pasuk, the fourth pasuk is by Menorah. It says, "Arba gevim mishukadim kafteirel ufrachel." Shav shel kraisai gevim mishukadim. So the gevim could be mishukadim, or you could learn Shav shel kraisai mishukadim kafteirel ufrachel. The mishukadim is going on the kaftarim in the prophet. And then the fifth pasuk is Vayomer Moshe hinach shoychev v'mamisecha. You're going to die. The and this nation is eventually going to rebel, but you could learn it differently. You are going to die, and then you're going to have Tchisa Mason. If you remember in Sanhedrin, when the Gemara was discussing how do we know Tchisa Mason in the Torah, this was one of the psukim. Even though you're going to die, you're going to have Tchisa Mason. So these are the four questions. So Upirish Shapnei Moshe, who's a mafarish on Yerushalmi, Shekavanas Yerushalmi lahakshish Mazua Hesi Rabbi Yeshua Rabbi Shmuel Linyanach Lagamri. Why did he just go to a completely different pasuk of Kitab Tedechem Yayin Hoyloi Leimer Tam Shenitim Levinoi Bishnei Oifanim? He should have picked something that could be interpreted two ways. V'ay Rabbi Shmuel Yedeya V'lo Yedeya Tam Exeir. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's saying over here, but it's just interesting. The Tosfos asks, why did we jump to these psukim? And he brings the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi asks, why did he go to those psukim? He should have picked one of these five psukim.
Any of these have more propensity towards what pshat is.
Yeah, what's the simple pshat? What's the simple pshat of these five psukim?
Putting you on the spot.
Okay, so simple pshat is not always achievable. Okay, so sometimes simple pshat isn't so simple. So
because it would be inconsistent with what's going on. You mean? So
yeah. And also, it seems to me there's much more than five psukim that you can learn in two ways. I come across it all the time. How do you read it? Where do you put the comma? Okay, that's the issue here. Where do you put the comma?
By the bracha, when Yaakov stole the brachas, so Yitzchak said, "Mi eifoi," who was the one who came? Right. Who's the one who came? And stole the brachas? Is he saying it seriously? How is? Yeah, but
what David's saying here, the question are all where the comma is. Right, it's not a question of what pshat is. It's a question of where you put the comma. Does the word belong to the earlier phrase or to the next phrase? But even those, David's saying, there's many other examples of that. So Amar of Elah. So Rav Elah said, "Devarim shemashikan alein es hapeh, kloimer yishakenu nemishikas piu." I'm not sure what the Yerushalmi is saying. It's something that shuts you down. Right, that's really what he was trying to do. He was trying to indicate to Rabbi Shmuel not to ask too many questions. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Chagi b'shem Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani says Kvoshim l'vushecha, Kvoshim ksiv. I mean, I don't know what this pasuk is, but okay, it's that from this pasuk you learn this is also a pasuk that could be interpreted two ways. Okay, it said when your talmidim are not able to understand the depth of Torah like you'd want to give it over, hide the divrei Torah from them. They're not ready for it. Higdilu v'nasu katudim once they're old, like adult, some type of animal, then Torah. Then you could teach them. So I'm not sure which one. Kavoish means to cover. Kavas means be a ramp, help them understand it. So again, it could be read to hold it back from them, referring to younger children, but it could also be referring to give it to them, which is referring to older people. The Ketani also Rabbi Shmuel Katan Haya Baisa Shah. Rabbi Shmuel was I guess younger in those days. Very, very. Not everybody's zoicha to it. You can't just dig into stuff. Sometimes you have to refrain from digging into the Torah that's above your head. Talmud Shalonu. That's the svara of our Gemara. The Amar B'Samach Ki Gazu Gzeirasa B'Marova. What the Yerushalmi is hinting at, that once someone's a mature Talmud, a big Talmud Chacham, then he could get into the deeper meaning of what the Torah is teaching us. But when you're still a rookie, you have to accept a lot of the facts and not dig in. And exactly what the Yerushalmi sentiment is what the sentiment that the Gemara says they did in Marava, which makes sense. It's from Eretz Yisrael, which is where the Yerushalmi was written. The Omer Mori Rabbi Chanan. This is also hinted to in the Yoitris of Parshas Paraduma. It says, Ein lahar acher ma nechtika shekulam nisnu b'meshika loshin meshika aleim esapeh. So neshika doesn't mean kissing. Neshika means you keeping your lips together, meaning certain things you're not supposed to delve into. So he also uses the same loshin at the beginning of our pasuk of Yishakenu Neshikas Piyu. So that was an interesting Shalmi brings up a whole bunch of interesting psukim. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. So we now have a whole series of reasons why it's possible that cheese of a goy is osir. Some of them would explain why they're only osir b'chila. Some of them you can ask why are they not also osir behana. Gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. Dorj Rab Nachman Bared Rab Chisda. My it says in the pasuk, L'reach shmonecha toivim. Let's look at the whole pasuk. L'reach shmonecha toivim, and then it says shemen turak shemecha. The shemen should, your name will radiate the shemen, the nice smell of the shemen. Alkein alomis ahevucha, and therefore alomis pasuk pshat in the pasuk. If you look it up I looked it up in the article. That's where the nations love you. So what's this talking about? Lama Talmud Chacham doima. What is the Talmud Chacham comparable to? Litzluchish shall plighten a vial of shemen parsimon, which smells very good. Megula, when it's left open, reicha noidef, its beautiful aroma wafts through the air. Mechus, if it's sealed, ein reicha noidef. So that's l'reich shemonecha toivim. V'lo yoid el advorm shemechusen mimenu miskalvim. Things that are normally concealed from you will be shared with you. Rashi says, Megula rechanoidev, v'hani d'chsiv shemen turak shemecha. When it's uncovered, when people are exposed to you, then the beauty of the aroma will spread around. Kishimegal noisa, when it's uncovered, umarikin shamna, and they pour out its oil. Kloimer, kishatem alami toyel talmidim, so that's what the pasuk was referring to. The wonderful aroma of your shemen. When will it get out there? Shemen turak shemecha. When you're teaching, when you teach Torah to kinderlach, and your Torah is being spread around, that's what spreads around your name. And then what's going to happen is when you're teaching Torah, you're also going to be zoicha that things that you might have otherwise not understood are going to be explained to you. of which Pashut means the nations of the world are going to like you. Kriboy alumois avucha, the hidden secrets will love you. So by teaching Torah, you'll be zoicher to understand secrets that you otherwise might not have understood. The Malach Hamavos likes you. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but the Malach Hamavos likes you. Shenemar alamis ahuvucha, karibei alamis, meaning al moves. I guess they say you're supposed to keep your friends closer and your enemies closer. So if the Malach Hamavos loves you, maybe he'll leave you for last. He'll be zoicha to be noichel olam hazeh olam haba echad olam hazeh olam haba. Shenemar alamis kribe olamis. So alamis means the nations are going to love you. Alamis means you'll be zoicha to side this atayah. Alamis means you're going to be zoicha to be friends with the Malach Hamavos, and alamis means you'll be zoicha to olam hazeh olam haba. Beilud varim shall oivdei kachavim are asurin ve'eini surin Yisrael. The following things from a goy are also to eat, but not also banal. Number one, chalav shachal ve'ovid kechavim ve'eini Yisrael re'ehu. Milk of a goy that the Yid didn't see where the milk came from. V'apas, and bread of a goy, v'ashemen, and oil of a goy shalahem. However, Rabbi Uvezdinai, he tiru Hashem. Rabbi and his bezin were mater shemen because they felt it was a gzera. You need to have oil, and therefore Rashi says it wasn't Rebbe in the times of the Mishnah, rather it's Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, who was the grandson of Rebbe, Kedama Bigamar. Okay, Dr. Gemara weiter. The shlokos are kol davar shebishloi ovet kechavim. Anything that going cooked like canned fruit. Vafilu b'chlitar. Why is that also Rashi? That's because of chasnas. So you're not allowed to cook things that they make. Ukveishim, Rashi says it's like fish or vegetables that they would soak them over roish for aglaim shebehema. That's not so appetizing. The chaymis they would soak it, I guess, to preserve it in vinegar. Those were not allowed. Shadak and losais l'soichin yain v'chaymitz. So they're also because of the yain v'chaymitz problem. Utris trufa. Tris, Rashi says, is small fish, and if they're chopped up, you can't tell if they have fins or scales or not. So therefore, you shouldn't eat them because there could be non-kosher fish mixed into it. And then vitzir she'ein ba daga kolovis shoytetus boy, and tzir, which is like fish juice that doesn't have a daga kolovis shoytetus boy. Rashi holds that it's a tamei fish, and it can only survive in the tzir of a kosher fish. Tosfos says it's a tahar fish, and if there's a tahar fish in the tzir, it probably came from the tahar fish. Okay, chiluk we already learned a couple of days ago is a small fish that's kosher, and it gets mixed in with other fish that are not kosher, which are the fish called the other fish that gets mixed into it is called irvuna. Irvuna is a non-kosher fish. Now the chiluk fish, even though it's kosher, it doesn't have fins and scales when it's young, only when it's older. So the younger fish looks like a non-kosher fish, and it can be mixed in to a non-kosher fish, and that's why you can't buy it from a guy. If you remember, we learned if you buy it from a professional fishery, there they know the difference and they won't mix in the wrong kind of fish. The karet shall chiltis, and a piece of chiltis is some type of peri, and Rashi says the problem is because it's sharp, and you'll cut it with a non-kosher knife that has chazer on it, that has fat on it, and it'll be problematic. Umelech shalkundis, and melech shalkundis. Rashi the Gemara will explain why. Hareli asurin, but then isurin Israel no. Dr. Gemara, chalav l'may nechus. Why would we be concerned to buy milk from a guy? If it's because you're afraid that he's going to sell you the milk of a non-kosher animal, tarchir tamayark. There's a different tinge. A cow's milk has a whitish tinge, and milk from a behemoth tameya has a greenish tinge. So you should be able to tell. I'm sorry, yellowish. And if it's not because you're worried they'll swap it, but they might mix in some tray from the milk, nekum. There's a very big, simple way to find out. Try to take a little bit to make cheese out of it. Damamar, chalav tar aymed, chalav tamayne aymed. You can do a litmus test. So why can't you buy from a guy? You just do it a test. Either kaboy Well, if you want to make cheese, I understand that's a good test to see if it works. But he's using it to Rashi. It's for a Michael that you need milk for. So he doesn't want to make it into cheese. Frank Gemara was so big deal. The nishko mine kali, take a little bit. Remember, kali is the little bit of water we had a couple of days ago that they threw into the barrel of wine, so the snake shouldn't be interested in it anymore. Right? We had that story where the snake was coming, and he said, put a little bit of water in. So kali, put a little bit of milk in, a little bit of it. Then they come and test it to see if it curdles. Gemara, even the batar and nami, even with Torah milk, it's not going to completely dry out and curdle. There'll be some liquid. So therefore, because you don't know, is this little bit of amount of milk the mixture of treifa milk, or is it the natural way even kosher milk reacts? And therefore, there's no way to test, so you cannot buy even kosher milk from the body. The same svara. Even if you're going to make cheese out of it, you still have a problem because the fact that there's a liquid there, you won't know if that's because it's from not the right milk, or if it's because naturally even kosher milk doesn't completely clear. Okay, Zoktimar Vater, Vea Pas. You're not allowed to buy pas from a goy. Pas loyhutra bebez. They were never matir after the fact, like they were with oil. They were never matir pas later on. Mechlal the ikaman the shari. It must be that you would be able to be matir. And it's matir this type of zera that if they see later that they want to change it, they're allowed to change it. Zok to Gemara, Mechlal the ikaman the shari. It's as a matter of fact, yes, there were people that were matir it. Once upon a time, Rebbe went into the Soda. And the guy brought a pas porni, which is pas that's baked in a great oven. It's a big oven. It was a huge challah. They brought a big, beautiful Rebbe shechallah. Amar Rebbe, and Rebbe commented, "Kama no pasu." Look how beautiful this challah is. Why are the chachamim mastering this wonderful, beautiful bread? What do you mean ma'ro chachamim? Mishum chasnus. What's Rabbi's concern? They had a very good reason. They don't want you parting with the goyim. Ella ma'ro chachamim la'oisra b'soda. Memela, in a city, you don't want to have such bread because you're going to party with them. But in a rural area where that's not going to happen, that's what was bothering Rebbe, why they answered it in the soda. So, because people misunderstood Rebbe's comment, and they thought that hit the Rebbe a pass. Rebbe was saying in the soda there's no reason to answer, and Rebbe was actually issuing a psak. Veloy, of course, that's not what happened. Rebbe lo hit there's a pass. He was making a comment that such a shod we can't have this bread, but not that it's actually mutter. Rabbi Yosef Item Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda Omar lo kach hayomaisa. That's not the story. Elo Amru. This is the story. Pamachas halach Rabbi lamokam echad. Rabbi went somewhere. V'ra pas dochuk l'talmidim. And he saw when we were traveling, there was not enough food. It's called food insecurity. There was not enough food for his talmidim. Amar Rebbe, ain't kan palter? Is there no baker here? Goyish baker here that we could buy from? But he didn't say goyish baker. He said, is there no baker? They thought Rebbe was asking, is there no baker, even a goyish baker? He just meant, is there no kosher bakery here that we can buy bread for? Even if we say you're not allowed to buy from a goyish baker, that's only if there is a Jewish baker to buy from. But otherwise, maybe it would be mutter to buy the pas palter. Zok to Gemara, Elo the leka palter Yisrael. Avu b'mokim the ika palter Yisrael loy. So you might be able to eat pas palter from a goy if there's no Jewish bakeries. But if there are Jewish bakeries, you for sure have to buy pas Yisrael. Rabbi Yochanan Amar afilu manor palter of kechavim hanamili besoda. Where could you buy from an oivit kechavim? That's only in the soda, because the lekel mechesh Rashi is the lekel mechesh lemshuche that kroy balmi. It's not a steady everyday thing. It's when you're traveling, so that's why it won't be a problem. But in the city, you shouldn't be eating goyish bread because that's where there's a concern of chasnas. Avoi was a namura. who lived in those times, yet have a manchis v'achol pas abei mitzvah. He was chewing and eating bread where also in a rural area. He was eating pas palter. Don't talk and learning with him. Don't learn with him. You know why? Because he needs to be shunned. He's eating goyish bread, and that is not allowed.
He was in a small town, he never choice. That's what it seems.
Right. So I guess Reb Nachman Bar Yitzchak did not agree with that sentiment. Now he brings down in the Mesivta from different Mefarshim who explain why he did it. So let me just have a look over here. Now, halacha l'maisa, we are mater paspalter, right? We are mater paspalter nowadays. So let's have a look over here. In Ois Lamed Vav, he says, Rabbi Lahitus Hapas, Rabbi was not mater. So he brings down the Mikol Makoim, Kivin Shekach Nagu Ha'om, Mikol Makoim Kivin Shekach Nagu Ha'om Lahatir, Mishum Shapas Gzeira, Shen Yorei Vatziba Yochalamika. It's also very hard not to ever buy paspalter. Therefore, Lechosh Lechomim, lesser Lahem is a pass, Vikaimus Manhagam. V'raya Gam Sheshavu Beheter, Mikach, Shalalon, Donim Reb Chelboy, Reb Yochanan, Ladas HaSoiver, Shapas Muteris, Eza Pas Muteris. There's a discussion of which pas should be mutter, where it's mutter. So you see, it wasn't such a hard and accepted practice not to buy pas palter. I just want to see where
The Bag-Pots were also worried that they're putting in.
No, it's only because of chasnas. There, it's only because of chasnas. I just want to see.
Where the heck they came. Traveling government.
So there are those who say,
But just a bun.
there are those who say that the reason why they don't talk to them in learning is mida connected mida. Who mizalzel b'divrei chachamim v'takanosam shegosh shalolech hapaskoyim ulakach al takalsu usashabchu ustavar b'smedrish. Don't praise his Torah. He didn't give enough respect to the exer of the chachamim. We won't respect his Torah, and that's what he brings down from the Ritva.
What does it say next line there? Before you close the thing.
Oh, well, I lost my camera. So, okay, what was that?
No, you were looking in the Mesivta, right on the right after the line you read, it talked about but Zman Hazeh. The last one you just read.
1 second. So let's look over here in the map. Maybe
Yeah, the one you just were reading.
let me see if we have the focus.
Okay,
Okay, is it focusing now? Okay, I'll just look at it inside. It says Nechlaku Hamaforshim Ha'im Rabbi Yochanan Ba Lahakal Al Divrei Reb Chelboy Al Hacham. What was he saying over Kloimer? In Ba Lahacham Al Divrei Reb Chelboy V'Loimer was Rabbi Yochanan saying Sha'af Reb Chelboy hit him b'makom shein palter Yisrael. Even though Reb Chelboy said if there's no kosher bakers around, you can bypass palter. Become makom. Even then, einei muter ela b'soda. So when do they allow pas palter? If you can't get pas Yisrael, that's also only in the field. Avo be'ir, where there's a real chash chasnus, even if there's no other bread, you still shouldn't buy from them. Osra afilu in palter Yisrael. That's a warm shot. Rabbi Yochanan is being makel and saying even if you could buy, even in the city, you could buy from a pas palter if you can't find pas Yisrael. And in the country, no matter what, you can buy from pas palter.
What about French fries? You'll be able to buy French fries from whatever machine.
There's no gzera on French fries as long as there's no concern that it's kosher. There's no gzera of chasnus by French fries. Pas palter is also because of chasnus, not because of kashrus. So there is no such concern at all on French fries. So Avoda you're allowed to eat goyish French fries if you could be sure that there's no treif in the ingredients mixed in. My fry is allowed.
No, but although if we're